So we'll take one relationship from each one of them.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Literary Hour. Today, we are very happy to have um, Dr. K. Moses Nangme, my professor, who will be joining us to talk about social and moral issues in literature, in Liberian literature. We're going to be talking about how the moral issues of the day, and the day, I mean the past and the present, how they're reflected in the literature, how the literature educates, empowers, and how it reflects what's happening in a society. In fact, we're going to talk about the didactic um, purpose of literature. So, Prof. Nagbe and I, we're just going to have what we discussed and said a fireside chat. We're going to be discussing two major works, Bitey Moore's Murder in the Cassava Patch and Joseph Walters' Guyana Pau. So I would like to welcome Dr. Moses Nangwe and say I'm looking forward to a very good discussion. Hi, Prof.
Hi, Jackie. How you doing?
I'm fine. Yeah. So
Okay. I think well we if we are looking at the social and moral issues, perhaps people can so easily understand what the moral perspective is, or we shouldn't be able to take things for granted, but try as much as possible to break a few things down. Then we get into the author's works. Uh, when we think about the social issues in society, first at the top of it is interpersonal relationships. That's what we think about when we think about social issues. We also think about crime. We also think about people's interaction with health matters, the environment. We also think about the issue of family relationships and diversity. All these things come into, because social has to do with human or
yes,
people, and how they relate one to the other becomes the centerpiece of social issues. And when we are talking about moral issues, we are talking about the question of good and evil.
yes,
We also talk about the matters of beliefs and creeds. We also think about, our own relationship to the supernatural, the supreme being. So many people have so many names for those things there. So we have to keep those things in mind, and we hope that our audience will kind of pay attention. So if we are discussing each of the books that Jackie mentioned, then we have to see how they reflect the social issues and what have you. So again, I'm always happy to be part of such a discussion, because we have to keep in mind that uh, what literature does is that at some point it offers moments of reflection. We find the works, each of the works, and we talk about how characters behave, what they say, and all that in each of the works. And then the question is, why do these characters respond the way they respond? Not only that, but also if they respond in ways that kind of prick our own consciences, how are we supposed to respond? What are we supposed to do? So instead of just talking about how literature will directly teach a lesson, literature brings us into the conversation. Literature provides conversation, and we are supposed to interact with one another to see how best we are either entertained or educated by whatever the characters do in each work.
Prof, I've been really fascinated by the literature, especially Achebe, Ngugi, and Soyinka, when they talk about the community as portrayed in the literature, and I was reflecting as you were talking about the moral aspect between good and evil,
Mhm.
and then the social aspect, and one of the things that is fascinating in the literature is that you see that the community members, right? The community members, when they talk about good and evil, or they talk about um, how somebody has gone against the norms of the society, the core, the most important thing is the survival of the community. They kind of uphold it at the cost of the individual.
Yeah, they are right. You see, the thing about it is that we all are aware that human beings are group animals.
Yeah,
And that's the whole concept of community, is the whole concept of group. If individuals in a community, if individuals in the group are not well behaved, it has a reflection on the community, it has a reflection on the group.
yeah,
That is why in the African context, no, but is so easily placed with the community. That is why it is often a struggle between the Western culture, which focuses more on the individual, and the African culture, as well as the Asian culture, and even the Hispanic culture. They focus on the community. The sustenance of the community is the sustenance of the individual. It is not the other way around, where it is almost certain that the individual drags the community. And we've seen that. We saw what happened in America, for instance. The idea that the individual is given so much freedom that almost immediately he or she feels that at the top of it, I am the only person and no other thing exists. And if you create a community like that, if you create a group like that, almost easily the community disintegrates. And that is
yes,
what Soyinka and all those people are talking about.
yeah. Remember, Prof, in Things Fall Apart, when the community raided the house of forgotten the Okonko, right?
Mhm.
Okonko's house,
Okay.
right? Yeah, because he inadvertently shot somebody during a week of peace,
Hmm.
and although he did it inadvertently, I mean, he was shunned. He was marched out of town. So yeah. So the gods must be at peace, I guess, is the
Yeah, I mean, when during the week of peace he misbehaved,
yes,
the goddess, the goddess had to come and demand certain fines and all those things from him, and it looks like Okonkwo would not behave. Eventually, it led to a point where he and the others killed little Ikemefuna, and therefore he
yeah,
had to be
yeah,
sent out of town. So the community has a part to play, and we can bring it, for instance, to uh, uh, Joseph Walters's novel, which is Guanya Paul. Of
yeah,
course, it is not stated clearly, but the idea that Guanya, who was betrothed to Kai Kondo,
taekwondo,
even though there was an age disparity, because she was betrothed when virtually she was nobody, she was a child. And when she became 16 years old, Kai Kondo came in and wanted, the contract consummated.
yes,
And well, she said, well, look, I am not in for this traditional arrangement. I am my own person, and therefore I have to determine who I want now that I've reached an age of majority.
yeah,
And of course, so the chase began, because she didn't want to listen to her mother. The father had been dead so many years. Uh, she didn't want to listen to her mother. In fact, she derided the mother over tradition and all that. The next thing is that she had to eventually, run away from tradition. She and her friend Jassa, yeah, Jassa, they fled. But then,
Okay.
as I said, it was more like maybe a curse. We never know. It depends on who is looking at that aspect. Uh, it felt like a curse because she ran and eventually they caught her and they were bringing her back to Taekwondo, and
Yeah.
she decided to commit suicide.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, one of the books we'll be discussing is this book called Guainan Pao.
Mm-hmm.
And Guainan Pao is the first African novel to be written in English by a Liberian in 1894. So when, right, Prof?
One.
Yeah, one.
91.
So when if you're in conversation and somebody says, well, Liberia doesn't have a literature, or you just started writing, you tell them that Guaiana Paul was written in 1894 by a Liberian. And this is the first African novel written in English. It's the story of an African princess by Joseph Walters, a Vai man. It talks about the Vai people, and it's, I call it a feminist novel, because this novel, written by a man, a Liberian man, who writes and he says, in short, our women must be educated, and I call it a feminist novel. So this is really a novel you should read, and this is one of the novels that we'll be discussing today. Yeah. So yes, Prof. Sorry, I just wanted to.
No, I mean it's that's what the conversation is all about.
Yeah.
That is one of the things that one will see in literature, in the work of artists and writers and authors. See it in the early 1890s. He wrote this novel, and today we are talking about feminist literature and all that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But way out there, so many years ago, the guy
So
wrote
many years.
and saw the importance of women and the women's education and what have you. The story behind it was that he had intended to raise some money to educate as many women as he possibly could.
Yes.
Unfortunately, after finishing college in Ohio, he went to a college in Ohio, Cleveland,
Yeah.
Ohio.
Oberlin.
He attended Oberlin College, and no sooner had he finished college than he contracted tuberculosis. In those days, they called tuberculosis consumption. He had consumption and he died. We understand that his grave is at St. John's, the high school in Rabosport.
Yeah, and I hope they can make it one of the places that people can visit to, yeah. So
that is where tourism and all those things come in as well. Because if a tour guide has information like this and you have people visiting such areas, then they can talk about a particular storyline like that of Joseph Walters.
but Prof, I really admire Kai Popo, her father,
Mm-hmm.
because if you talk about somebody who was a very moral person,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was the chief, and he would join the people to make farm,
Mm-hmm.
and interestingly, people were saying to him, but if you go to join the common man to make the farm, and somebody enters the town, they wouldn't know who's the chief,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, I don't care, I'd rather help my people. And he said, with all your big degrees and things, he says, for me, here is the thing I'm most proud of. And what he was most proud of was the marks that's on him. All the mark from battle. That's
Yeah.
what he was most proud of. So Kaipopo was really for me. I saw it like, if we're talking about moral issues, he was a very good and principled chief. What do you think?
In fact, another thing is the idea that for him, title alone did not mean a thing.
Yes.
A title did not mean a thing. And you can even bring that to education. There are some of us who, because of our little education, we feel that we are most important than any other person. And therefore, we don't enjoy the dignity of work. Dignity of work is very much important, even as educated as anybody can be. And that is what Kai Popo demonstrated in there. That is all the reason why his people loved him. That is why his people loved him.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, and Prof, even in the beginning of the book, it tells you the history of the Bai people.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting, because Joseph Walters, being a Bai man, he says that, the Bai people, they're the most educated people except for the crew. Which I thought was very funny.
He had better make that confession, because
it was very interesting. It was very funny that I saw that, that he was a very a good man. But then again, we come now to the early childhood marriage and morality. Yeah.
But the thing about it, Jackie, you see, that is all the reason why people should not get to the point of condemning the past. The past has its good parts. It may have, just like any generation, just like any culture. You cannot deride a culture in its totality. Equally so, you should not be prepared to praise a culture in all its totality.
Yes.
With us, we praise Western culture in all its totality. It is only these days that we've seen that those who are in the West are human beings.
Yes.
Those who are in the West are human beings. There are bad whites and there are good whites. There are good blacks and there are what? Bad blacks. So the whole idea, even in logic, when we talk about that, we should keep in mind that history generalization, stereotyping, and all that, whether it is friendly stereotype and what have you, stereotypes are no good. You cannot take a whole generation or the past and put it in one basket. And that is what you see as you're talking over there.
And one of the things, when we get to the other book, but some of the sentiments expressed by Guaina are the same sentiments expressed by Tene. In some of it about, you are the old people now, we're the young people.
Go with your old tradition and that sort of a thing. Yes. Enough of your tradition.
That's very, very funny,
But the thing about it is, sometimes that is the difference between young people and old people. When you are young and you have not tasted life, when the older people are telling you about certain things, you ignore those things. In fact, if you are not very cautious, you get to be insulting and all that kind of a thing. It is only later on you will get the understanding. I say, okay, this is what my father was talking about, or this is what my mom used to talk about. I now see. By that time, if you are not lucky, your parents have left the scene, and maybe you wish you had time to apologize to them and what have you, but then it's very late.
So if we can compare and contrast at the end. So let's now go to Baltimore. More people know about murder in the cassava patch. It's not something, and let's talk about murder in the cassava patch. About Yes.
One of the things that I remember of him is that they came from the old school Society of Liberian Authors, SOLA. Okay. And when the coup occurred, members of Sula kind of went into silence because their patronage had come from the old order, the Talbots and all those people. So with sadly the treatment that a lot of these government officials got, it was something that shook the spine of a lot of people, and so Sula went into a retreat. By Timor, when the Liberia Association of Writers came, because I think I was the second or third president of the Liberia Association of Writers. When law came, some of the political minds of Sula, they won't identify with law, but by Tamia, always identified with us. And each time we had a workshop or there was a seminar, even if he was not invited, he wanted to keep around and what have you. So he is someone who I hold in high esteem as far as the old interacting with the young is concerned.
So, so, let,
Go ahead.
so let's talk about Kema and Tene. Let's try and put them in this social moral order. So how do you see Kema? How do you see her mentorship of Tene and things like that for the
Well, again, we're talking about relationships and all that kind of thing within the context of the social issues now.
And we're assuming that everybody knows Murder in the Cassava Patch.
Well, okay, maybe the assumption might be unfair to some of these people. In Murder in the Cassava Patch, Gotot is ready for marriage. Gotot is ready for marriage. But there is a problem. Tene and Kema had been the blood relations of Oma and their wife Somukan.
Yeah.
And Gotokai was a foster brother.
Yes.
And the idea that after completing his initiation, he will come out and want to get married to Tene. The town was divided. Some said, well, you are already in the family. You are,
yes.
foster brother. A foster brother is a brother.
Yes.
But, well, some say, well, maybe the royal thing now. So the best thing is, well, they can go ahead, but if it is going to happen, then he shouldn't pay any bride price. He shouldn't pay any dowry. But then I guess he wanted to shine his ego too. He said, well, I'm going to pay. In fact, I'm going to offer $40, which was the price at the time. So, well, Tene became, you're talking about the relationship of Tene and Kema now. Kema happened to have been the elder sister
of Tene.
Yes.
What I'm interested in is, how in literature, even in Charles Dickens, the city life is always seen as the one that corrupts. It's the bad life.
Too, yeah. Yes.
And the rural area is always seen as pure, innocent, So we have these two sisters, and we have Tene, who is, I think, young and innocent, and then you have Kema, who drinks. You remember she could drink like a fish.
Yeah. She was high class girl.
She liked good things. So I'm always fascinated about this mentorship between Kema and Tene. that was Tene so gullible? So if you look at it and bring it to present day, how do you see this mentorship when if somebody comes from so when they come from the city and they go back into the rural areas, where is that conflict? Where does it come from, and who wins?
Now, remember, now we're talking about the individual and the community. Within the context of rural life, you find the community.
Yes.
The rural life is where you find the community. In the city, like we say, everybody for himself, but God is for all.
Yes.
So you know, it's more like a rat race that goes on in the city, and it becomes even a tension rating thing if you have a younger person, who is being controlled by the older person. And that is what you find in the context of Tene and Kema. On the question of who wins, again, it depends on who has more influence. And in the case of Tene and Kema, maybe Kema saw herself as winning until the tragedy occurred. You see, because Godokai, as you remember, Godokai could not stand that anymore.
Yeah.
This thing is getting too much now. If I can't have this, there is something in the Kwa language which is we can translate it as mutual loss is preferable. Mutual loss is
mutual loss. Okay.
in true, for instance, we call it sedi sedi. In other words, I don't eat, you don't eat. Yes, mutual loss is preferable, and you can take it to the Solomonic court. You remember the two women who came before Solomon to claim a child.
Yes.
The one who didn't have the child said something like, well, she didn't say it out loud, but it was implicit that if I cannot have my child, this one will not have her child too. Therefore, the best thing is let's cut the what? Let's cut the child into two. And that's where, of course, that was the mistake she made, because that's where Solomon saw it and said, no, if this child were your child, you won't call for the cutting of the child into two.
Yeah, and also if you look at the way things progress in murder in the cassava patch, you see Oman Joma and his wife, who are the parents of Tene and Kema. As time goes on, it seems as if the pendulum swings, and Kema and Tene becomes the breadwinner. Yeah, so these people, and this is what's happening now. Although they try to tell Gotokai that we will let Tene marry you, we don't like what they are doing. They always follow Kema and Tene because at pure economics, they don't have anything else. Do you see that being reflected also in the society at this time?
That is the interesting thing about literature, and that's why those who take interest in it find a lot of things. As I told you when we last spoke, I said that literature is the confluence of disciplines.
Yes.
Literature is the confluence of disciplines. We see economics at work right there.
Yes.
If you are not the breadwinner, if you don't bring the bacon home,
yes,
nobody listens to you. Even though you, in this case, even though they had been the parents, when the children were young, they were the providers. But now, at a point where the children have grown, they begin to dictate what goes on in the family. And I'm sure, to their anger, to their sadness, and what have you, to their disappointment, they are incapable of wielding the kind of influence or pressure they would have wielded as it was in the past.
Yeah, and like when they were determining the bride price,
Mm.
it was very interesting reading that, because it was like you were Gotoka is going to pay to ask if there are any other suitors,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and then he's gonna pay
mm-hmm.
to say, okay, there will be no future suitors.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Then
Mm-hmm.
he's gonna pay to have the rope tied around
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
tennis end.
In, in,
Then
oth-
he's gonna pay for it to be cut for the engagement. You
in,
know,
in, uh-huh.
sorry.
In other words, that's again, you've gotten into accounting.
Yes,
You've gotten into
yes,
accounting. Yes.
yes,
Yeah. It's like even budgeting. You
yes,
have to pay this the amount that is going to be paid. But what are the line items?
yes,
And
yes,
it's the line
yes. Yeah,
items
the
that are
line,
being provided
the
over there,
line
right there.
item.
That's the line items that are being provided over there. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yes,
So
yes,
if you have background in all those things and you are bringing them to bear on the story that you are discussing, then definitely you can, the reader or the audience can really kind of extract much enjoyment out of whatever it is. And just to add a little more, that is why it is said that the success of a work depends on the the um, the various sectors of the audience that can draw a lot of things from that one work. The
yes.
more people that can draw enjoyment from that book, the better it is for the value of the book.
And even you see not the moral but the social
Mm-hmm.
in BT and her husband. Is it BT and her husband?
Uh,
When Gotokai goes there,
oh,
you know, and he's telling Gotokai
yeah.
how this woman is so
Come on,
good.
equity. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
and he's saying that, oh, family life is very good.
Mm-hmm.
This woman is very good, and he's saying all of the things he went through
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
to get her.
Yes, yes, yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
so Gotokai sees this family cohesion, and he
Mm-hmm.
wants it also.
Yes.
Even though his boss tells him, "But I have another woman for you to
Yeah.
marry," he wants Tene,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, he wants Tene.
Sometimes that is the stupidity of determination. That is the stupidity of what the idea that you want something come hell or high waters. That's the one thing you want, and it can have terrible consequences. And that's
Yes,
part of what happened in the case of that's the thing that happened in the case of Gotoka and Tenet. Who
yes,
knows if he had taken the causing of
yes.
that employer, probably would not have had this. Maybe the story would never have ended the way it did end.
And
He
then it
even
also, sorry.
remember that he even went to Sanakwele and met his uncle.
Yes,
The uncle wanted him to stay over there, but what did he say? No, my tenant, no, my tenant, nobody else. And he came down.
yes, yes. And another thing that I found very interesting, talking about the dynamics, is that when Kema and Tene went to visit,
Mm-hmm.
you see the orderliness of the society, where the landlady, she gets the room complete,
Yeah.
so it's almost like you are engaged but you are not married.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
there's no sleeping here.
Mm-hmm.
Kema and Tene will sleep in this room, and
Yeah.
your room is that side. you
Yes.
know so it's almost the society getting together to say, okay, this is the norms that you
Yes.
must follow.
Yes.
you
Mm-hmm.
know
Mm-hmm.
I found it very interesting that when Tene was getting all these goodies from this other guy,
Mm-hmm.
not only was Kema complicit in it, I think the parents also knew, but
We just said that poor people, what will they wanted something to eat now? Huh? They wanted something to eat. I mean, at that level, what economic capacity did they have? None.
so what now, what we would say is, how does economics impact the society?
Mm.
How does economics impact social and moral attitudes in a society?
It does that to a terribly great extent
Yes,
because economics is survival now. Economics has to basically do with the gathering of resources to be able to sustain yourself. That is the fundamentals to economics.
yes,
And the person who has that dictates to a large extent. That is why, irrespective of what the person can bring in, if somebody can have a stellar character to say no is no, then that person is worthy of respect.
Okay, so that comparison, no is no, and I'll do anything to survive, would be
Yes.
our next topic. But I wanted to ask if we have any questions or any comments that anybody want to put up before we
Yeah,
go on.
probably, yes. We can open it up for others to come in.
The knowledge right here, but our young people wouldn't watch it because they're not talking about gossip or sex videos. Sad for my generation.
The thing about you don't leave the people alone. You know, the thing about it is that among them still there are some young people who mean well. You see, the thing about character is a very delicate thing. Character, absorbing character of value or finding ways to kind of improve upon character is not an easy thing to do. All I think we have to continue to do is that we should have a lot of these forums. We should have a lot of these forums. For every individual, there is always a moment among moments. For every individual, there is always the moment among moments when that person, it's like coming to your epiphany, you know, coming to the light. There is something to strike you, and that can shake a lot of things in you. All we can do is to create the atmosphere, to let them know that there is an environment that even some of our older people, some of people in the years of some of us, you know, again, that's where worldview comes in. If you know what life has or what life ought to have, if you can really understand your own purpose, something will drive you towards positive things as opposed to negative things.
Yeah, and if we look at the two novels and look at the women, because these are all strong women in their own way.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's go back to Guaina, the Guaina Pao,
Mm-hmm.
right? So her mother comes in and says to her, "You're going to marry this Kaikondo,
Mm-hmm.
and he's 20 years older, but he'll take care of you." And she makes it known to him that she doesn't want to marry him,
Mm-hmm.
and he laughs and he says, "Oh, you will change your mind." So she and Yasa, she and Jasa, they run away because she doesn't want to get married. So they go on
Mm-hmm.
this voyage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you see that they're meeting all these people. In fact, she and Jasa, they are very astounded at the way
Women
women
are
are
being treated.
treated.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She couldn't believe that
Yeah.
women were treated
Mm-hmm.
these barbaric ways.
Mm-hmm.
But she had made a vow that, and she even said to her mother that she would not get married. She would not marry for anything but love.
Mm-hmm.
So when Kai Kondo, who wants to marry her, when his messengers come and trick her and catch, and they're taking them back,
Mm-hmm.
she and Jasa commit suicide.
Yeah.
They jump into the river and they rather die than go into a loveless marriage, even though Kai Kondo has money.
Yes. Okay.
So, mhm.
Yeah. The thing about it is that remember now that she saw someone who impressed her.
Momo.
Momo, yes.
Yes.
And Momo had gone to the coast to get some money to be able to refund Kai Kundo's bride price.
Yes.
She was interested in Christian marriage, and Momo too was interested in Christian marriage. And that's she and Jessa went out there. Besides going all around the via country, she went out there to look for Momo.
Yes.
To see if she could find Momo, and they would just go and get married. In fact, that is how at some point she went to sleep and dreamt about Momo.
Yes.
She dreamt about Mama going into the church to get married. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out. But she was strong-willed. I guess that's the point you wanted to make. She was strong-willed. She knew what she wanted, and that's what she would kind of go after.
So she committed suicide rather than marry this wealthy man. But
Yes.
now let's contrast her with Kema and Tene.
Mm-hmm.
Tene has a wealthy man.
Yes.
Right? Tene is going to do everything to keep that wealthy man, even lie to go to Kai.
Yes.
Right? So now there are all these different women. You have the older women, like the older women now, who they hold on to tradition. They say
Yes.
this is the way things should go. This is how society should be ordered.
Yes.
Then you have the young people, I guess, in two different camps. You have the Guaina who says, I'm going to only marry for love, and if not, I will not marry. Then you have the Kema and the Tene who want to be the city girls, and they will do everything to get these materialistic things.
Yes.
Right? So let's come to the end now. Either one, right? Guaina dies. What happened to Tene? Maybe you can tell us.
Tene dies as well, but Tene's death is not on principle.
Yeah.
And Guanya's death is on principle. Even though, let us just make it clear that committing suicide is not good, but the idea that she stands for some principle and says, well, look, I want to be liberated. If it will go to a point of even killing myself, that's what it has to be. But nobody should pressurize me to do what I don't want.
Yeah.
That becomes an important point to look at.
So let's come to present day now in Liberia, right? Looking at the social order, looking at the moral order. How do you think writers in Liberia or who are writing about Liberia, what can they do now to educate, right? And to educate the people now about how they should go.
Well, the thing about, and that is one of the angst that Western critics have had when it comes to African literature, saying that African literature is didactic. In other words, it's always teaching, preaching. But didactic literature has its place, and that's what you find in folklore, myths, and all that. But the thing about it is that I am from the school of thought which has to point out that, look, to a large extent, the human audience is a kind of knowledgeable enough to be able to draw a line between good and evil. So all the artist has to do is not so clearly to teach or preach, but to lay out the tapestry of human behavior and human attitudes and what have you. And the role of the literary critic, for instance, is to explain these things and then leave the rest with the ordinary person to be able to draw a conclusion. For instance, in the case of Tene, why would she, if she got to a point where she wanted to be with Boama Kachi, for whom she had Boo Boo as a daughter, then she would have stuck with Boama Kachi, as opposed to, when sometime in Liberia, I think before the war, they had this to, I will not marry, I will not marry, I will not marry, I will Iso. If you Iso, then of course you get what? You get a hammer on your head, and that's probably what is happening. Tenen wanted to kind of enlarge her largesse, her romantic largesse, and it is in that process that she would have even told Clement, look, if she wanted to be with Goroka and forget about Boama Kachi, she would have said, well, look, I want my Godokai. That's the one I've known all these years. I want to be with him. And please keep your man from Firestone or what have you. Please keep him away from me. But she didn't do that. Maybe, was it a youthful innocence or what have you? I don't know.
I find that the society sometimes is complicit in supporting this kind of behavior, you know, because for example, if you look at Kema, right? Kema goes drinking. A young woman, she goes drinking, and the next day, I forgotten the guy name. I think Buru tells Kotokai that this woman is not only loose, she drinks more than a man. You know?
Jabu, yeah, Jabu, yes.
Yeah, Jabu, yeah. But yet the society, you know, I mean, she's a woman, so there are red flags. There are red flags because society frowns on the union of Kema, I mean, of Tene and Gotokai. They are brothers and sisters. They may be foster brother or sister, but they are brother and sister raised in the same house, reared in the same house. So they are not supposed to be the ones to say, oh, I want to marry you. You know, so right away, the society starts to say, this is wrong. Right? So this is wrong. And if it is wrong and society frowns on it, it's not going to come to a happy ending. And as we all know, Gotokai kills Tene at the end.
Yeah. Again, that's this whole thing about community comes into the picture. In a real traditional or rural life, people have taboos, and therefore can do everything they possibly can to punish in whatever way. But these two girls kind of straddled the rural as well as the urban. You know, in other words, they were not strictly rural. They were between rural and urban, and therefore, you know, in a large sense, when you get to a point of straddling both rural and urban, people tend not to kind of exact a lot of pressure on you, as opposed to if you are rural and only rural. That might be one of the reasons that happened in the case of Kema and Tene.
So what lesson can young people get out of this?
Well, there are a lot of things. One is that it is important for someone to have good mentorship. You know, you want to be able to find a mentor that many people can praise. And if you have someone like that, and you want to get into the company of such a person, that's good. The other thing is that there is an importance of determination. You want to find a solid focus and stay with it. But if you are not very focused, if you do not try to develop a purposeful and meaningful life, then so many things can happen to you. The third thing is that money is not all to life. I know who doesn't need, especially in the modern times, who doesn't need money? But money is not all to life. If your one singular thing is to go after money, then sadly, it may destroy you.
I like what Achebe says, that we live, and half of our being is the human being, right? And then the other half is our spirit, which is the chi, right? And so the chi is the one that said you can do it. It's the spirit that comes to give you the will, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting that in modern Kisawa Patch, there's a lot of, I wouldn't say witchcraft, I would say a lot of voodoo. Because Gotokai goes, he gets all Tene's hair, and things, because he wants to make Tene love him. But if you look at Gotokai as a character, as a person, Gotokai also is flawed. He has a father who comes from Panadapo. The father who doesn't have a father, he's actually sold, or he gets in contact with I think a Guinean trader who ultimately abandons him. So you have Gotokai, and you know the society, although the society is the African society says that we value communalism, but they also value your success. They celebrate your success if it will move the community forward.
Yeah.
If it's going to fracture the community, then they don't celebrate that success. Yeah. But Gotokai, I don't see him as a success. I see him as somebody who's working just for this price, 10. You know, it's not as if to say he's developing as a character, as a person. You know, he's not. He has this singular focus. And my thing is that, does he want 10 because he wants the family life that Oma Joma has? That he's looking for a home life. Stability, you know, that happens when you have a fractured society, when you have you know, like a lot of our kids are in the street, no father, no mother, you know, so they latch on to something. So for me, Gotokai is latching on to Tene to say, with Tene, I'm going to build my family, you know. I mean, what do you think about that?
But that is true. And the thing about it also is that, you know, we tend sometimes to be a projection of our backgrounds.
Yes.
And in the case of Gotokai, he found something important in the home. He found stability in the home. Remember now that when they were kids, they were doing hide and seek, and Tene told him to hold her waist and said, "You remember that we are not what? We are not blood relatives." And that again became a what? A point that ignited his own interest in her as such. I don't know whether people would have asked one or two questions. I don't know.
She was 13, Prof. That's very young. She was 13. So if you're 13 and you're living in a house with girls, let's say you're a guy and you're living in a house with girls as foster sisters, it would seem to be that the parents would say, this is your sister. That even if you come back and say, I want to marry this person, that the parents will say, no, she's off limits. That they would not entertain that.
Of course, you know, we are talking about human creativity now. So Mo might have taken a license, poetic license, to have injected that part to create the tension that will lead to wherever it led. So in art, people say you must dispense with what? You must dispense with critical thinking to ask all those questions as are found in there. So there was a leeway so that he would plant the seed of conflict and tension and what have you to get to that. There is I know we are about to round up. There is a question that keeps, you see the question, what is it?
Distinguish between the moral issues and the social issues inviting Moore's murder in the cassava patch, and what do they reflect in the Liberian culture? But that's what we're talking about. So, for example, now, what do you think, if you had a list, what do you think would be the great social issues of today in the Liberian society?
Oh, well, I mean, you can't be just one thing though. The question of interpersonal relationship, how do we create these relationships? And what becomes the core part of that relationship? Do we establish interpersonal relationship because of what each side has to give, or do we form these relationships because we feel that they are good? In the case of Yasa Guania, you will understand that these were friends who were sharing secrets, and the secrets were not going out.
Yes, yes.
If they were sharing secrets for what probably Yasa would get from Guania, probably before they would even think about running away, Yasa would have gone to whisper to the mother and say, "You sitting down here? Your daughter said we should run away," and all that kind of thing. And even when they were caught on the island Toso, and were being brought back, and Guania gave a little speech and dove into the water, Yasa would have said, "Well, that's your business. You if you want to go, you can go. But life is sweet. Let me go about my business." But what did she do? Their bond was always there. But in the case of Kema and Tene and Gotokai, you realize that whatever Kema was getting from the urban part of her life was more than what Gotokai could easily give in, and therefore, what was she doing? She was misleading Tene from keeping to Gotokai, and as a result, so the short of the long is that we must examine our relationships. We must examine our relationships, and we must be people so well trusted to be confided in, except that if what the other party is trying to do is criminal or something of that sort, then we must have the temerity to say, well, no, we cannot get into something of that nature. So I see the kind of relationship we build, I see it as the center of it all from the two novels.
And the relationship we build, they are contingent on the wholeness of the individual.
Mm-hmm.
Because you see that in both novels,
mm-hmm.
the people were except for I would say except for Guina's mother,
mm-hmm.
Not even BT. The people are fractured people. Each in their own way, they're fractured, and so if we're to say the Liberian society now as many fractured beings, you have to have a foundation to be able to choose your confidant.
Mm-hmm.
Because now it seems as if you really can't trust. Why is it important for moral and social issues to be reflected in Liberian literature? Okay, you really can't really trust. So, for example, let me answer that question. Why is necessary? You have different modes of instruction. For some of us, we read a book and we say, oh, and we say, I've learned something from that book. So if we are to, for example, let's talk about Robert H. Brown, the applicants. Let's just talk about that, to answer that question. So if you look at the applicants, Prof. Nagbe, what do you see in that short story?
Mm-hmm.
You see two girls, right? Siata and Miata, who leave Cape Mount and come to Monrovia to look for jobs. And they go to this ministry and they meet these two men who are what? They keep asking them, oh, we have the jobs for you. You will be secretaries. But they keep saying, oh, meet me in this place, right? And these two men are married. But they tell the two girls, we're not married, but we will give you the jobs. So as it goes on, the girls get angry. They tell their uncle. Their uncle confronts the minister. The minister punishes the two men. And then the minister tells his driver, after the minister is done, right, punishing the two men, then he tells his driver, oh, take me to my girlfriend's house,
Mm-hmm.
and I will raise your salary because I don't want my wife to know.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things were written, maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, but it's still now. Why it is important that social issues are reflected in the literature, because the literature teaches you. The literature reflects society. So if you want to be able to learn, you will say, oh, let me read this. Let me see how this person navigated this. Let me see how this person was able to confront this challenge. So what literature does is it reflects the society. It says, this is where you are living. You know, this is your reality.
Yeah.
But can you now, out of this reality that you see, if it's flawed reality, right? How can we make it better?
And the thing, again, this is part of what we are doing here. What literature does, and the arts really, what they do is that they keep critical issues on the front burner of national conversation.
Yes.
The front burner of national conversation. Think about the preacher. Okay, think about the preacher. The preacher gets up and preaches, "Thus saith the Lord," and what have you. Who will listen will listen. Who will not listen will not listen. And like I said, at some point I said, there is often a moment among moments in an individual's life. When that moment comes, no other person has. If I am so caught up in playing the lottery, and one fine day I think I'm going to win big, therefore I put my entire salary, and the thing sweeps it away, and I bring nothing home. And something like this end up in a story. If the family, if someone reads that, that person has to think twice to be able to get into such a thing. In other words, time and again, literature is like the raging sea. It turns up issues every now and then. Some of the issues are well understood because they strike a chord. Remember now that literature strikes at the heart and the mind. And of course, it stirs passion. Passion leads us to certain actions. Therefore, if we are looking at all these things we are looking at, if we are talking about them all the time, literary critics and all those people coming into the picture, it is possible that at some point, someone is going to learn something and try as much as possible to live by that thing.
Yeah,
You never, even in teaching, you never know who is picking up something strong that you said and will run with it and try as much as possible to order his or her life. So that is what we do. Instead of keeping quiet, we'll continue to talk about these things. Those who will pick up things will pick up good things. Those who will not will not. And then, of course, they get a hit on the head and they will have to live with themselves.
It's almost like history. You know, people say, "Oh, why are you studying history?" History, if you look at patterns, right? Okay, so this country was confronting this challenge.
Okay.
What made them go this way and not this way?
Yes.
And then if that challenge comes back in a different form, you can say, "Oh, you know what? 50 years ago,
yes,
we had something like this, and we went this way, and that made all the difference." So so you learn. So that's what people say, you learn from history. It's repeated patterns.
History and literature. They are twin brothers, brother and sister. They are twins that create a roadmap for humanity to walk on, and that's what it does. That is why it may not directly teach literature and the arts. They may not directly teach, but at least there is something, as I said some time ago, that the lesson may be insidious. It crawls in little by little, and those to benefit from it will do. You remember, before we go now, you remember this little fable about the fly and the bee, huh? So fly was advised and would not listen, but who listened? It was bee that listened, and that is how today, as our people say, that is why today bee is making honey, and fly is out there, finally tries to live. So that's what life is, and as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. That's all it's going to be. Humanity is going to be populated with a lot of people, those who have the consciousness to be able to grab something positive, and there are people who may not grab anything positive and get destroyed by that.
And even when the question comes up, why is it necessary? I mean, our ancestors found it so necessary that literature or orature reflected and reflect and teach that they have fables and morals. You have stories like why spider has a small waist. That's because of greed. So you're learning, you're teaching the kids, you know, this is what you should do or you should not do. And those things were spoken before they were even written. So way back in the when in a pre-literate society, they knew that it was important to teach the society and the young people morals through through short stories and things like that.
It's all about behavior and attitudes.
Yes,
it's all about behavior. As I said, without the accepted behavior and attitude, the human group does not exist. The community does not exist. What is happening today? What created this nonsense in January? What created a nonsense January 6th? Is it not behavior? Is it not attitude? It is because of the corrupt behavior and attitude. That is all the reason why we have what happened at the Capitol in Liberia. The war that we had, the nonsense part of which is going on in our country today. It is all because of behavior and attitude. If people have the right moral rectitude and attitude, we will not have some of the things. We will not be every now and then scared about somebody is going to do this and is going to do that. So our people, most of our stories were targeting behaviors and attitudes. And behaviors and attitudes, their mind captures them and does a lot of things with them. And in the process, society gets destroyed. That is why we have to be engaged with literature as we engage with other things that are supposed to straighten our psychological perspectives on things.
Yeah, and it may be that literature is just one of the treasury of things that order our behavior.
Yes.
You know, there are sermons, there are songs, there are other things.
Speeches.
Yes, speeches, but they order our behavior. And that is what we're looking for. That's why it's necessary for the literature to reflect, to reflect and to teach. You know, that's why it is necessary for them for these things.
Yes.
This goes on more bankruptcy. The ex-slaves that came were products of damaged upbringings and generation of people whose morality was taken away by slavery.
Let's keep all this slave thing and I know they are important, but sometimes slavery has got nothing to do with the raw and ugly character we find in our societies. Well, you know, we when we narrowly define what are the causes of certain things, then definitely we don't expand the territory of our conversations and what have you. Yes, slave did all it could do and what have you, and we are mad about that. But that is not the only thing. You see, that's not the only thing that is the slave gave a moral bankruptcy. That's just one part of our lives, man. Even with your education, if you are bankrupt, you are bankrupt. Period.
And I know that, like we were talking, you and I, about negritude and how negritude has been done away with. But if you remember, what is necessary to reflect is that the francophone African countries, the people, when they decided that they wanted to recapture the Black consciousness and they went to negritude, it was reflected in the literature, in the songs, in the poetry. You know, they said we are recapturing our identity. We want celebration of celebration of Blackness. So what we're saying is that as our country moves forward, and it has a lot of things to grapple with. we say that people who are writing should keep in mind that one of the objectives of the writer is to teach, is to inform, and they must do that. They must show our country and the young people, this is who we are. Like I said about going to the museum, this is who we are. Pick up a book if you're talking. So what we are saying is, before you had Me Too movement, you had us too. Why not Paul? So don't always think that something that started from that is in the West, you like, oh, this is so good. I'm hashtag Me Too. No. Guaina Paul killed herself rather than be married to a wealthy person because she was not in love with that person. So sometimes it is good that if you're having conflicted emotions about morals and social norms, to go back to your history, to go back and say, let me see what strengthens me. And this strengthens you, and that's why literature is necessary. As Chinua Achebe says, it tells us where the rain started to beat us and where we should begin to wipe our skin. So that's why it is necessary.
You say, what can we do? Listen to what we are doing here and pick up what you have to pick up. No one thing. Somebody is not going to pick up a stick and say, "Come on, do this or do that." The same thing. The same thing. Others did, and some other people got wisdom from there. That is what you need to do. So there's whole idea of what can we do. Those who have the knowledge and skills will continue to bring out the core themes in individual works and discuss them, and then people who should take cue from those books will take cue from them. If it is a need for you to create book clubs, it is a good thing you can create book clubs. If it is important for you to always look forward to an hour like this and come and participate in the conversation, that's going to be a good thing to do. But I can assure you that teaching people to kind of transform their behaviors and their attitudes is not a singular and one shot thing. It is an ongoing conversation. It is an ongoing conversation. The more you get into a cycle that that speaks positive things, the better it is going to be. So seek ye groups that have positive vibe, and good things shall be added unto you.
So do we have any more comments that we can
So
see?
in closing, I will join Jackie to thank those who participated in the conversation here. Please do not ever think that it is a waste for you to come and participate in the conversation. Throughout the world, even in the United States of America, people are always talking, people are always writing. And in that process, there may be good things, good ideas to come from there, and the group or the community or the country can benefit a whole lot from whatever is said. Keep on the reading. Keep on the reading so that you will be able to have good questions as you did today, as you did a few sessions back. Keep it going. And I want to thank Jackie, who dragged me inside here, and Mr. Dennis Ja as well, at least. This means that we will have a way of either interact with our homeboys and girls, and also other people who may take interest.
Yeah, we want to thank you for joining us. We say that it is absolutely necessary that Liberians write. It is absolutely necessary that we teach our young people, because I've always said that, whenever we're talking about the war, we talk about the lives that were lost, as we should. But another thing that was lost was our value system. So literature will help us to find our values. It will help us to say, see what you've lost, and it will help us to regain our value system, because we do need to regain it. And just how you can talk about Charles Dickens and Mark Twain, Mark Twain, from American literature, Charles Dickens from British literature. We start to say, what defines us?
What defines us?
What is the Liberian literature? What is that canon that we always talk about? And these are two of it. You have the first African novel in English written in 1894, and you have a moral novelette, Fighting Moore, Murder in the Cassava Patch. So we want to thank you for joining us. We want to say that if you are a writer and you would like to come and talk about your work, we invite you, and we will be here next week again to talk about Liberian literature, because there's a whole trove of literature out there, Liberian literature. And if there's something you would like to see about Liberian literature, some discussion you want us to bring up, please feel free to write Focus on Liberia and let them know. And we will say thank you very much for spending your Friday evening with us, and have a nice weekend.
Bye-bye.
We are Liberian.